Hey, everybody, welcome back to Two Comic Book Dudes. I'm Aaron Clutter, the editor-in-chief for Comic Booked. As you can tell, our website is all over the outside of our little presentation here. With me, as always, is Justin Paget, one of our staff writers. Today we have a special guest, Zander Cannon, who is the creator of Kaijumax, a new series from Oni Press. Issue 2 just came out yesterday, so we're going to talk about issue 1 and 2 and some of the story behind it and how the creative juices flow, right? So, Zander, you want to talk about the idea behind the book in the first place, and then we'll go through issue by issue?
Sure, yeah. I mean, the Kaijumax is well, it's funny because I've been going to conventions for many, many years and explaining my concepts to people, and mostly you tell people what it's about, and they're like, yeah, okay. But now, once this book has come out, I can say, well, it's about a prison for giant monsters, and they're like, oh. And then I say, yeah, but it's like they form gangs and like smuggle in drugs and like stab each other, and they're like, oh, yeah. So yeah, it's a prison movie, 70s prison movie, but with giant monsters. If you ever thought that prison movies didn't have enough giant monsters, this one finally does.
That's cool. It's kind of like Pacific Rim meets Oz, right?
Pacific Rim meets Oz, yeah, or Godzilla meets Orange is the New Black.
There you go. Yeah,
nice.
The various permutations. Yeah,
that's too funny. Yeah, so we'll go ahead and launch our little presentation here. So today, Two Comic Book Dudes escape from Kaijumax. So I just thought that was, theatrical, right?
It's fitting. It's very fitting.
That's right.
Yeah.
So with first issue came out, I can't believe it's already been a month. It just seems like it was just out a few weeks ago.
Yeah, it goes pretty fast for me too.
I'm sure. Yeah, it was a great, and I heard about it ahead of time, and I tried to get it, and my shop only ordered like one. So then I had to go in and go, please get me this book. So they ordered it, special ordered it for me. I got it. But I love the wraparound cover. That's why I used that image. It just was really cool. The idea, I mean, initially you're going, okay, monster prison, that sounds interesting. But then getting into the story, it was just, I don't know, just the delivery of the story was really great. I liked the interaction with different characters. I mean, you've got characters that are kind of mythological and monster type characters, and they have their little gangs, like you said. It was really interesting because they all have different personalities and they work together really well in the story. It's pretty neat.
There's so much going on in that cover.
I know.
I'm just like picking up extra little spots, like what's going on in like a prison yard.
Yep.
Well, it's funny, this main guy, or this sort of like central character, it's like I had finished the whole issue and then I needed to do the cover, and I thought, well, none of the actual characters that I did like really sold the concept like as a visual image, and so it's like I kind of had to make up this character to sort of go, all right, this is what a monster prison is going to be like, with the tattoos and the, snorting the like uranium or just nuclear waste, and
right.
I wanted to make sure that really got the actual image, the actual idea across all in one image.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. And what's this bandana made out of? Is that like a parachute or something?
Like a sail, like for the America's Cup or something like that.
Okay. That's cool.
Always, like as if it has like the number on there and then the little like Australia or something.
That's too funny. Yeah, I knew it was something like that. I just couldn't quite tell what it was.
Yeah, that's always been a constant thing. It's just like, what is, all these things that have to be like the right scale or more or less. I'm not super specific about it, but yeah, I'm always kind of wondering, like, what can people use for something that's going to be like a big piece of fabric, or a big like something that would be like a crutch or something like that. You have to keep thinking of new stuff that's big enough.
Yeah, that's pretty neat. So with the first story, which we're just laying the groundwork, introducing Electrogore, who's the big yellow monster with the little green things on his back. Definitely the central character of the first issue, which I thought was cool because his backstory, or his little bit of backstory that we get, is he's a mom, he's a stay-at-home dad kind of character, and you have his two children that he was trying to care for, and he just happened to get caught because he was chewing on the Pan Pacific cable, right? So it was really neat, a neat premise. And then I talked before the interview. We kind of talked a little bit about what we talk about, and one of the big things was how he's kind of thrown into the storyline the same way we're thrown into it, because there's no real explanation of what Kaijumax is and who all these different people are. So we learned right along with Electrogore in that first issue. I thought that was really neat.
Yeah, I mean, the sort of the classic sort of viewpoint character, especially if it's about a place, you always want the person who just, shows up wide-eyed and goes, "Oh, what's this?" And they're the person who can sort of like conceivably ask questions like, "Hey, what's this?" I mean, in a way, you don't want to sort of resort to that kind of storytelling, but for such a bananas concept, you want to be as sort of conventional, I think, in the storytelling as possible. So I tried to make sure that this hewed pretty close to the prison tropes and the prison story, just so that you kind of underline all of the monster jokes and all the ways that sort of the monster stuff and the prison stuff kind of dovetail together.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. One of the things I thought about was like Cool Hand Luke or Shawshank Redemption, kind of the way it comes in and it's, I'm in prison and what do I do now?
Right.
It was
right.
Cool.
Or Escape from Alcatraz or Shawshank Redemption or
Yeah. So, okay. Well, you want to go ahead and jump into number 2 and we'll talk a little bit about that. So,
yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead. You
okay.
summarized it better than I did.
Well, issue 2 just came out Wednesday, and I really enjoyed the way that this delved into more of the character backstories for characters that we just kind of glimpsed or just seen maybe the facade that they put up in the first issue. Gupta, the guy here on the cover is the I can't even think of his name. The
Ultraman guy.
Ultraman, yes.
Yeah.
It was right there on the tip of my tongue. He's kind of the enforcer. He's the big guard that everybody has to watch out for. But there's so much more to that character, and it's really cool the way that unfolds in this issue. And we won't do too much to spoil that, but he's definitely got some demons that he's dealing with while he's trying to keep all of the inmates happy and satisfied and complacent. We'll say.
Yeah.
So that was pretty cool.
And high.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Well, and it's like every prison story's got to have like the corruption and sort of the drugs and all that sort of stuff. I mean, the funny thing is, it's like when I'm doing research, it's like I have to like I'll do a little bit of research into real prison stuff, and then I have to stop because it's just depressing. Because and I'm just thinking like I don't know if I want to get too into the politics of it because it's just so awful and so depressing. So it's like I try to stick to like prison fiction so that I can go like, all right, here are the tropes, the drugs, the corruption, and all that stuff.
Yeah,
so, yeah, it's but yeah, he's sort of your classic sort of I'm not making enough money at this job, so I need to supplement it by doing X, Y, and Z.
Yep. Yeah, I love just the opening scenes there, ripping off his arm and beating him with it. It's just like, wow.
Right. And then he's like, it'll grow back. It's just going to grow back. Like, yeah, I know.
Yeah, he's definitely got some deep-seated hatred for the monsters that you could definitely see that coming through. So it's pretty interesting, especially because of the way that he still, fraternizes with them in a way, if you want to say, that he's definitely got that connection that maybe he doesn't want to have. So it's an interesting character. I'm interested to see how he develops through the story. So
yeah, he's a lot of fun. I mean, it's fun to sort of like like you were saying that it was an interesting departure that it was we got the main character of Electrogore in the first issue and then sort of switching main characters, and I want to make sure that everybody's storyline kind of gets served as they go through, but having each issue kind of focus, kind of not well focused, but like also just sort of begin and end on on different characters, I think really helps keep it interesting, differentiate those issues,
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And so along those lines, we talked about the difference between um, coming into a story with a pre-established um, universe. We know some of the big publishers have their. I mean, it's no problem to come in and do a Batman story because everybody knows Batman, everybody knows Iron Man, everybody knows Captain America. But to come into this and basically develop your own universe, what I guess initially, what steps did you take? You said you went to a lot of cons and talked to people about this first. How long did it take to get to the point where you were ready to really get this put together?
Well, I watched a lot of Ultraman with my son. My son is bananas. Well, especially when he was younger, he was really bananas about Ultraman, and so we would watch it over and over again. And it's for kids, and so you would really, I mean, my mind would wander while
Yeah.
we're watching it, and you just start thinking about like, oh, that's funny, or that is weird that they did that, and it sort of implies like this greater like how this world must work, and I mean it's completely weird, and
Yeah.
so that's when I mean, I watched enough of it, and then you watch enough Godzilla movies that you're like, all right, I got it. I know how this world works. And I had always kind of wanted to do something about like what do monsters do when they're like on Monster Island? Like do they
Right.
hang out? Are they friends? Are they enemies? Whatever. And not just like stomping around, whatever. And then I thought, well, but it needs a hook, and that was why I decided to do a prison. And then that was why I decided to do a prison story. I'd been thinking about like that series for a while, but it was always kind of on the back burner while I was doing other projects or I was making money and doing things in established universes and stuff. But honestly, I think it's easier to do something with a made-up universe for me than it is with an established universe because there's like if I were to do like if by some miracle Toho wanted to do like Godzilla prison, and I was able to use all the Godzilla monsters. It's like, aside from that initial sort of like thrill, it would be just a monumental pain in the neck because there'd be so much backstory and so much continuity that somebody would know. Like somebody would know it if you screwed up, and
Right.
and then of course you'd have these great ideas, and then you'd find out, oh well, we can't do that because you know Mothra would never do such a thing,
Right. Right.
Whereas I can
Yeah.
get these analogs and go, yeah, of course that guy would be a corrupt, guard and tear
Yeah.
people's arms off. Of course he would.
You don't want to piss off the fanboys, right?
Well, yeah, and I mean, well, I learned this because about 5 years ago or so, I did a Transformers series. I did a Bumblebee series, and it was one of three that were coming out at the same time. One was like the main Transformers series that Mike Costa was writing, and one was called the Last Stand of the Wreckers or something like that. And they were kind of like mine was sort of the aimed youngest, then Transformers, and then Last Stand of the Wreckers. And so like people liked they actually really liked the Transformers one. They loved Last Stand of the Wreckers, and they hated mine because they're like, what is this for kids?
And it
I'm like,
kind of was, right?
well, I was like, yeah, they are robots that turn into trucks. Like, I don't know if you were familiar with the Transformers.
Yeah.
And so like, and it was just like, and it was madness to me because it was just like, I'm trying my best to make it just like the Transformers, and it was not going over at all.
Wow,
So,
that's too funny.
yeah, I just thought that was really fun. I mean, I didn't really care. It didn't bother me that much, but it was funny to me, like,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I think I read a lot of comics. Unfortunately, I do. So
Unfortunately.
Lots and lots.
yeah, I've gone into my local comic shop and they've told me I have the biggest pull of anybody, which is kind of sad.
Right,
Especially
but
since
you're like,
I don't get
high
paid to do
five
this.
me.
Right. But then I get the comments where I read everything I buy. I don't just buy it and put it in a bag and board and put it in a box. So when I go in the shop, I'm more than happy to tell people about a book I read that I really liked. And one of the guys that works there, he's like, "Do you ever not like a book?" I said, well, if I don't like it, I don't buy it. I buy a lot of stuff, but I usually try it out. If in the first couple issues it's not hooking me, then I'm not going to pick it up again. But I'm not going to sit there and go, oh, this is so terrible, I would never buy anything by that guy, because you never know.
Right.
One of the guys we're going to be interviewing next week, Michael Morisi, and he's got a ton of different books, and some of them I really like, and a couple of them I picked up, and I was like, I don't like this. And I actually emailed him and told him I really didn't like that book. So, yeah,
Well, life's
but
too short to be buying a comic that you don't like, for sure.
right.
Yeah.
So, I picked up Kaijumax, the first issue. I was like, this is really a cool story. And I couldn't wait to get number 2. Now, I read the electronic copy. Unfortunately, I haven't picked up my books for Wednesday yet. But, I can't wait to get that because I'll read it again before I put it away. But I can always find something good about a comic. I don't think I've ever read anything where I was like, the whole thing is total crap,
Right.
So,
well, I mean, there's so much craftsmanship that goes into any comic that comes out these days. The bar is so high, I think. And it's really, I think that, like DC Comics stuff is not usually my cup of tea, but it's like, I can look at it and go, these artists and these writers are really amazing at what they do. I mean, it's hard to like dismiss it out of hand, but of course, there are people that can criticize anything.
Right.
Yeah.
And that was, I'm actually working on an article right now called Good Comics, Bad Comics. And it talks about that whole concept. Maybe I'm not a critic. Maybe I'm just a fan. Maybe I'm just a reader. I like to read stuff and I like to understand how it works. And I like to look at the positive parts of it. And I mean, there are some comics that I've read where the art is just horrible, but the story is really cool. And it's like, wow, if the art was better, this would be a great book. Or the story's not so great, but the art's really cool, or maybe they both suck, but there's something about the way the person put their heart into this book that made it great. So there's something positive in every book, but So, but there's always people out there too who will tear anything apart. Movies,
just because they want to.
Yeah, and movies frustrate me the most, I think, and that's one of the areas I focus on in my new article. It's just the fact that a movie comes out and there's pieces of it that are really great, and then there'll be 100 people over here who are just picking it apart. And I don't understand that.
Yeah, I don't understand that. Well, I don't have time to go to a movie. I don't even have time to go to see movies that I love, so I can't imagine seeing a movie that I don't like.
Right,
yeah.
Exactly.
Yep.
I could see Kaijumax as a movie.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, but they'd have to make it with, like, rubber monster suits.
Oh, like go old school with
That's
it? Like
right.
old school Godzilla? Yeah.
Yeah, no CGI. Unless maybe, like, for the blood squirting out of when his arm gets ripped off.
No. You've got to do that with real, like,
everything.
Blood.
That's funny.
Well, I want to see the movie now even more. So
I know.
let's start a campaign to make that happen.
It is one of those things where it's like, I mean, people have said like, oh, well, how can you, it's been sort of like saying, well, it's hard to do giant monsters in comics, but I do think it's funny now that this comic has come out. It's like, it would really be hard to do it in film because you just be going, what,
Yeah.
Would it look like that Henson show, Dinosaurs, maybe?
Yeah.
Where they'd be like, they put puppets, or would you CGI the faces, or it'd be like Pacific Rim? I don't know. I mean, it's one of those funny things where it's just like, well, it was really hard to do as comics, but now it's hard to do again as film.
I don't know. Dinosaurs was a great show, so maybe we want the Henson's Creature Shop to do it.
Totally, that would be awesome.
Yep.
They'd
So
go ahead. Sorry.
They would. Well, I put together a few things where people can follow you or stalk you or whatever.
All right, yeah, there we go.
So I didn't put your personal phone number down there or anything, but so they can follow you on Twitter at Zander Cannon, and then find you on Tumblr, and of course they can find a lot of your books at the local comic shop. And I noticed a lot of things on Amazon, and of course Kaijumax #2 is in stores now.
Yeah, and you can go to kaijumax.com, and it'll redirect to that Tumblr.
Cool.
So,
all right.
If you can believe that in 2015 I could get the name of my comic as the URL, like
that is pretty cool.
You have to go with a pretty weird name for your comic if you want to get the URL.
That is too funny. All right. Well, that's so. The other thing that kind of came up in our initial talks was the difference between putting together a story for in this kind of a serialized process, or putting out a short story versus having that a lot of time to kind of lay your story out. And I talked about On Writing by Stephen King, where he talked about the difference between doing a short story and a novel. And I'm sure that's what you come up against when you're doing this, because you're trying to, how can I compartmentalize the story in 24 pages, but then still leave that longer story there and have people interested and willing to come back for the next issue.
Right, and I mean it's interesting too. I mean, what I compare it to is my last book, which is called Heck, and even though it was a 300-page graphic novel, but it was done in chapters that were all kind of between 12 and 15 pages long, and that was helpful too. And then I had to sort of like deliver the goods for that scene or that several scenes in that short amount of time. Like I couldn't let too much just be pushed off into the next bit. I mean, I think I needed to sort of like have a little bit of structure, or else I would have gone, or else it would have all fallen apart. But the difference too is that I didn't have to deliver the same thing. Like I feel like in a series like Kaijumax, it kind of needs to center around the same stuff. I don't want it to just be the next chapter in the story, the next chapter in the story. I want it to be an episodic thing, so that every time you pick it up, you're going to be getting something, not the same experience, but something of the same, derived from the same thing. We're not going to be too deep into a long, complicated story. I want it to always be I always want it to be sort of like the central experience is like it's monsters in prison.
Yeah.
They're not going to be out in outer space or whatever. At least, not for long.
Not yet, right? Yeah. Well, and it is interesting because I always think of comics like TV shows, and if you have a long running TV show, you want that central theme to be similar, and you want those subplots to be running from issue to issue or episode to episode, but you still want something fresh and new.
Yeah.
There's so many shows on now that have been running for 6 or 7 years where it's like, okay, this episode really reminds me of something from a couple seasons ago, and the only thing different is maybe they're running a piece of a subplot. So it's difficult, I would think, to keep that freshness and still carry your story forward. But like you said, make sure that experience is similar all the way through.
And I think that mainly the main thing is to keep people from having to remember much. That it kind of bottlenecks in terms of like the amount of like information that you need to have. Like it's like, oh, you have a lot of information that you think about through the episode, and then it's like at the end it's just it bottlenecks down to this, and it's like you only need to remember who a couple characters are. I'll remind you of the rest at the beginning of the next episode, and I think that that's important because, I mean, that's what TV does really well, and now that TV has gotten really good. I mean, it wasn't great 15 years ago.
Yeah.
But like, it's like they don't say this is the story so far. They say these are the things that you need to know to enjoy this episode. This is the context that you need. And I think that's a really good way to look at it, where it's just like, it's important that you know these couple things and there's some continuity. And if you have been watching all along or reading all along, you will be rewarded. But you don't need to have your scorecard out where you remember exactly everything that happens in order to enjoy what's happening there. And I think that's important, to rely on your reader too much, but they don't have to make it the focus of their entire life to remember what the heck happened last month in your comic.
That helps. We had an issue just this last week. We do reviews of like full company reviews for a couple of the publishers, and one of the books we were reading, and I'm like, I couldn't remember these people's names for anything. There's only like 4 of them, so I could remember 2.
And they used
that girl
to have a TV show about the characters. So
yeah. So, but yeah, if I'm not reminded, it does get difficult, especially as much as I read. It's nice that all the guys in Kaijumax are monsters because I'll easily remember them compared to, how many different superheroes, right? So,
right.
That's cool.
And that's the thing that I found about this story is that it's, so different from most of the stuff I read, which is, capes and cows and stuff like that. And this just gives you like a fun story in a world you can just jump into. You don't have to worry about the history of the character and he didn't do this character right or whatever. You can just jump into it. I thought that was really great about it.
Yeah. And I mean, more and more, it's funny because every once in a while people will ask me like, well, if you could do any character, which character would you do? And I used to have all these answers. I used to say, oh yeah, Batman or Daredevil, and it's like now it's like none of them. It's just like if I really wanted to do Batman, I could do something that was almost like Batman, but that I could actually do without the Batman's gatekeeper saying, no.
Right.
He's married to Catwoman now. Your story is completely illegitimate. Like,
Yeah. Although after Convergence is over, that none of that'll matter anymore, right?
Oh yeah, for like 2 weeks it won't matter.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, until they look over and go, but Marvel's doing that. So yeah, It's always funny. Okay. Well, anything else, Zander, that you'd like to talk about? Any other upcoming projects, or are you just focused on?
This is my only project right now, and I mean it's remarkable how much time it takes. I mean,
I'm sure.
And I'm writing all the way through to coloring it. So it's it's great that I don't have to do storyboards, and I don't have to do illustration, and I don't have to do a million other jobs that I would always do as a freelancer. I just go to the red line on this all week, every week. So that's is the most wonderful thing that I could ever imagine, is to be working on this.
That's cool.
Yeah,
It's awesome. That's definitely a great book. We're talking with Zander Cannon about Kaijumax. Issue 2 just came out Wednesday, so definitely go down to your local comic shop and pick that up, and look for issue 3 then in 4 weeks, right?
Yeah, something like that. I'm not the one to ask.
Okay.
I can tell you, it's too soon. It comes up too fast.
All right. Well, we'll keep an eye out for that, and maybe as we get further into this series, we'll have you back on, and you can talk about character development and that sort of thing. So
that'd be great.
We appreciate you taking the time, and we thank you, the viewers, for taking time out of your busy day to watch this. I know there's no lovable kittens, no dogs talking, no dancing with the stars. I mean, whatever else, right? All we do is talk about comics and try to sound halfway intelligent. So that we would appreciate if you would subscribe, like, share, do all that good stuff. Tell your friends. Check out our channel at comicbook.com. You can go to our website. We've got a link up in the upper right-hand corner, whichever corner that is, that says I think it's a comic book studio, and you can click on that. That'll take you right to YouTube. And you can check out all the other videos. We got tons of stuff on there. I think at last count we had like 75 things, and most of those are from our comic book studios, which those guys have done some really great stuff with Young Justice, a fan-made show, which is great, but all that cool stuff. So, all right. Thanks for taking the time. Appreciate it. Zander, thank you.
Thank you.
Justin, talk to you later.